Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Freyberg, and welcome to Lecture 14, Proving Ideas 2, Claims, Warrants, and Evidence. So this will conclude our little pair of Proving Ideas lectures. Let's see about linking evidence to claims today. Okay, we're going to work on proving our claims with evidence and warrants. This, by the way, is a picture of the Global Consultancy Capstone team presenting in Reykjavik, Iceland, a couple of years ago. And I'm happy to tell you all about the Global Consultancy Capstone anytime you'd like. All right. Now, in the previous lecture, we looked at substantiating claims by doing a CKOM inventory. Common knowledge, other person's idea, my idea inventory, to see if you had a nice balance of other people's ideas and your own. And we also did the how do I know test as a way of identifying claims that may be unsubstantiated and finding a way to articulate how you arrived at that claim. Today, with the evidence, warrants, and claims exercise, we're going to be doing kind of another kind of inventory that really works with the specifics of how to explain how you arrived at your claim. So if how do I know starts you off, this is the exercise you're going to use to really build that pathway. But the first thing we need to do is explain what we mean by the terms. Okay. Now, you probably were told that in order to support a claim or to substantiate a claim, you needed evidence. Well, that's really only half the story, because the evidence does nothing unless you explain how you used it to arrive at your claim, or how it led you to arrive at your decision, your conclusion, your claim, your assertion. Evidence is really just the accepted details and information available. What does that mean? That means this kind of stuff. What's observable without reasonable disagreement? You know, if you're in a classroom, you might notice there's chairs and tables and people and whiteboards and projectors and computers and book bags and cups of coffee and all that kind of stuff. Those are just the details. That's the observable detail. What you have to say about that detail is something else. The second thing that constitutes evidence is testimony, interviews, or surveys. Basically, what someone else said, right? What did someone say in an interview? What did they say in a survey? What did they say in the answer to any kind of question? Reference to authority is also a type of evidence. That's when you're bringing in sources, right? Whatever that source said, that's a piece of evidence. But how that piece of evidence leads you to a claim is a much longer process. And finally, numbers, data. Again, what you do with that information, how you explain it, how you interpret it, how you synthesize it and analyze it, that's the stuff that leads you to your claim. But those four things are what count as evidence. And that's it. Observable stuff, what people said, what experts said, and are there numbers and data that you're working with? Okay? That's what evidence is. A warrant is the explanation of that evidence. A warrant explains how the details of your evidence led you to your assertion, led you to your claim. It's your reasoning process, it's your thought process. It's how you got from one place to the next. Now, if we're in class, what I might do as a living example of this is have a person actually explain a bunch of evidence, and for every warrant they provide, for every explanation of some evidence, they get to take a step towards the claim. So if you can kind of imagine this as a big room, and this is 30 feet here apart, you might have a whole list of evidence, and I might have someone talk about that evidence. And every time they're talking about the evidence and trying to explain it, they get to take a step towards the claim, right? If you keep talking through your evidence, you will get to a claim, and we will see how you arrived at it. Now, a claim is a point or a recommendation you want to make. It's an assertion, it's a decision, it's an answer. Please remember that a claim is something that reasonable people could disagree about. Okay, evidence, warrants, and claims. Those are the three things you need to keep in mind. And you need to remember that all evidence needs warranting to show how you arrived at your claim, right? It's not about having a claim and then just finding all the evidence you need and somehow shoving it in, and therefore your claim will be backed up. That's just an exercise in confirmation bias, right? If you start with the details, start with the evidence, and see where it leads you, you will have a process that's more analytical. Let's do a couple of examples. And I think, as you know by now, I like to take paragraphs and I like to break them down, use filters and lenses to see them. In this case, I call this a CWE inventory, where C is the claim, E is the evidence, and W is the warrant. And we just break down a paragraph. I've written all these paragraphs that we're going to use. You can then take this technique and examine your own writing. Okay, I'm going to read the sentence and we're going to figure out if it's a claim, piece of evidence, or a warrant. Standard employee evaluations need to be replaced by interactive interviews in which supervisors and employees discuss the projects and skills related to the position in question. And what do you think that is? Claim, evidence, or warrant? Claim, remember, is an idea, an assertion that reasonable people could disagree about. Evidence is observation, stuff someone else said, expert or otherwise, or some data, some numbers. And a warrant is the explanation of the evidence. This is a claim because you see the word need, you want something to be replaced, you want action to be taken. Well, that's an assertion. People can disagree. Hey, we don't need to replace the evaluations. Maybe we just need to think about them a little more. You know, reasonable people can have a discussion about this. They can disagree. It's a claim. Let's go on to the next sentence. Employees don't like receiving completed evaluations, and supervisors don't like writing them. What do you think that is? Claim, evidence, or warrants? It's a claim because reasonable people could disagree about this. We can have different outcomes. Look, employees, can you imagine if you got really good evaluations that really paid attention to what you did and offered outlines for how to improve and how your work could become more valuable? Wouldn't you like getting that kind of evaluation? I do. and supervisors don't like writing them. Well, you know what? I know a lot of supervisors who quite like writing them. And reasonable people could disagree about this. It's a claim. Next sentence. In fact, employee complaints about the evaluation process are at an all-time high at contemporary organizations. And that's from Masson in 2020. Is that claim, evidence, or warrants? That's evidence because it is from a source. Masson actually did suggest that. What you have to say about that piece of evidence would be a warrant. But right now you're just, hey, Masson said this. This is Masson's idea. Just can't disagree. It's just, that's the idea. Okay, and you're including it. So it's a piece of evidence you're including. Let's see if I do anything with that piece of evidence. Standard written evaluations serve only to create a sense of competition and fear in the workplace. Claim, evidence, warrant. It's also a claim because you're saying evaluations only create competition and fear. Well, we could have a conversation about that. We could have really different perspectives on that, and we could have an engaged, thoughtful discussion. It's a claim. These kinds of evaluations are detrimental to any idea of teamwork and collegiality. Claim, evidence, warrant. It's a claim because, again, these are ideas people can disagree about. It's not linked to any piece of evidence. It's just out there. Hey, these kinds of evaluations are detrimental to teamwork and collegiality. Well, let's talk about that. It's a claim. And the final sentence, if we just change to interactive and collaborative interviews that reflect on projects and skills, then this sense of fear would be eliminated and we would be able to get improved work performance. Well, that's basically just a restatement of the first sentence, right? This is what we need to do. Well, wait a minute, it's a claim. Because wait a minute, maybe I think we need to do something else, right? Reasonable people can disagree about this. So this paragraph has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 claims and 1 piece of evidence. You think that's working? No. Every claim needs sufficient evidence and warrants to prove an idea. What's sufficient? It depends on the riskiness of the claim, right? The riskier the claim, the less obvious the claim, the more evidence and warranting you're going to need to prove it. Now, are there any warrants in here? No. There's 5 claims. That should mean there should be at least 5 pieces of evidence and 5 warrants. Probably more, because it usually takes more than 1 piece of evidence to prove a claim. And if every piece of evidence needs to be explained, and it does, then every piece of evidence has a warrant. Are you seeing how this isn't working out? This is just a stack of claims with 1 poor little piece of evidence sitting in there. It's like the International House of Claims. This would be the star breakfast at the International House of Claims. All right, here's a second example. So the first example was awful because it was just all claims. In this one, we have a different kind of problem. Let's look at this. Marketing departments use advertising to influence audiences. Well, okay, that's just common knowledge, okay? As researcher and documentary filmmaker Gene Kilborn has argued, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it doesn't matter in terms of this inventory, it doesn't matter what Kilburn says here, because as soon as you're referencing a source, it's a big E. Now, what you need to do is explain that source. That's going to be a warrant, right? A warrant is simply explaining your evidence. Let's see if I do it. Clearly, advertisers have reaped their rewards. What? How? I don't know. I haven't explained the big quote by Kilborn. I have no idea if advertisers have reaped their rewards. There's absolutely no explanation of that big block quote. There's no doubt that this trend will continue as more and more money is directed towards marketing. It's another claim, right? Again, I've got a couple of claims, a big chunk of evidence, and as I've written this, I'm somehow expecting Kilborn to do all the work for me. If I just toss a big chunk of evidence in there, well, it's going to do all the heavy lifting. And you know what? It doesn't. It does nothing. Evidence just sits there until you explain it. And I've done no explaining here. There's no warranting. This is not good. All evidence needs sufficient warranting to prove a claim. And there's no explanation here. This is a very, very common habit. I see this very often. All right. Let's see what this one looks like. I don't know. I'm seeing lots of sources. That looks good, right? Okay. Employee performance evaluations completed by functional area supervisors are standard practice at Aggregate Golf International, which is a corporation that oversees operations at 13 courses in Southern California. Is that a claim? Is that evidence? Remember, evidence is just observable details or sources, or what people say. This is evidence because it's just observable. This is what Aggregate Golf does. It's a corporation. It oversees operations at 13 courses. I can't agree or disagree with that. Whether they're effective or not at doing so, that's a whole different story. But right now, I'm just saying, hey, they oversee 13 operations at 13 courses in Southern California. Yeah, that just is. Okay. A new process of evaluating employees is needed. Claim, evidence, or warrant. That's a claim because I'm saying, hey, we need to implement a whole new system of evaluating employees. We can have a lot of ideas on how to get there. So that's a claim. Reasonable people can disagree. Interesting claim. Now we're going to see if it's a proven claim. According to Tuckman, in the last 5 years, 78% of businesses in California have changed the way employees are evaluated. What's that? That is a piece of evidence. And you know that as soon as we say, according to Tuckman. The rest doesn't even matter in terms of identification purposes because we are invoking a source and these are the details of the source. That's evidence. Well, the good part so far is there seems to be only one claim at this point. Moreover, a CNN poll from January 2017 found that 9 out of 10 American workers who currently undergo employment evaluation are dissatisfied with the results of the process at their workplace. What's that? Is that a claim? Is that evidence? Or is that a warrant? Is that explanation of the evidence? That is evidence. And how you know that is right here, a CNN poll. That's a survey. Okay, so all I'm doing here is reporting on the survey results from CNN. How I interpret those results would be a warrant that might lead to the claim. But let's see if I do that here. Interviews conducted with employees at Aggregate Golf International for this project revealed that 67% of on-site employees believed that evaluations had, quote, little to no effect on job performance. And 90% of that group cited lack of direct contact with supervisors as being a major factor. Lots of good stuff in there, but what is it? It's a piece of evidence. And how do you know? Because I'm just telling you what the interviews concluded. I'm not interpreting those interviews. I'm not analyzing them yet. I'm not trying to figure out what they mean. All I'm doing is saying the interviews conducted showed X. That's what it's 67% believed blah, 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 and 90% of those believed blah, blah, blah. I'm reporting out on what was found in the interview. I'm summarizing the interview. So that's just a piece of evidence. The recommendation is to move to 360-degree reviews conducted by stakeholders on site at the course. Well, a recommendation is always going to be a claim because people can disagree about the recommendation, and it's really just a more specific version of the original claim. So, we can even count this as kind of one claim. But what do you notice? There's one claim, there's 4 very yummy pieces of evidence, but there is not a single warrant. There is no explanation of the evidence. All I did in this paragraph was dump the evidence in there and hoped that it would lead you to the same conclusion I came to, which was moving to 360-degree reviews conducted on site. I can't just hope you're going to get to the same decision that I got to with the same pieces of evidence. I need to explain each of those pieces of evidence and show you how I arrived at my decision based on that evidence. And without that, you have an unsubstantiated claim. Now, one of the things I like about this paragraph is that there's really only one claim. You really should only have one claim in a paragraph. Okay? But you need sufficient evidence and warranting to prove that claim. So in this case, I'm missing at least 4 warrants. Now, I bet 15 minutes ago, if you had read this paragraph, you would have said it was a great paragraph. Tons of evidence, focused claim, awesome. Not so much. Here, what I've added are the missing warrants. So it's the same paragraph as we just read, except now I've added explanation of the evidence. Okay, you don't even have to worry about the word warrant. You just need to think, okay, here's a piece of evidence Now I need to tell you how that piece of evidence led me to my decision. And by the way, if you have a paper that has a lot of O's in the CKOM test and very few M's, chances are, and sorry for all the algebra here, chances are those missing M's are actually warrants, W's, because the warrant is where you explain your thinking. Okay, let's look. It's all the same. So this is according to Tuckman. 78% of businesses have changed the way employees are evaluated in the last 5 years. So what did I write? Such a high percentage of changes in practices indicates that California businesses are open to changes in personnel review processes. So this is talking about this 78%. Hey, 78% is a high number. Well, what does that make me think? If 78% have changed, well, that means they're willing to change because they have changed. So that, that's good. I'm just explaining what the Tuckman piece made me think. Let's go on. So that's a W. Moreover, a CNN poll from January 2017. Remember the CNN poll? That's the dissatisfaction poll. So look, now I want to talk about that dissatisfaction. I want to talk about that poll. And this is what I was thinking in relation to that poll and how it led me to the claim. This popular national survey, the CNN survey, demonstrates that the vast majority of American workers, 9 out of 10, would like to experience what they would see as a more productive process of evaluation because they're dissatisfied, so they want to be satisfied, right? If most American workers are dissatisfied with the current evaluation practices, and if California businesses continue to be open to change, now that's a call out back to the 78%, then the time may be right for Aggregate Golf International to make a shift. Right? I'm talking about the evidence. This third piece, this is the interviews that revealed that 67 interviews at Aggregate Golf specifically, where the employees believed that evaluations had little to no effect, and that people really, 90%, said it was lack of direct contact with supervisors, which was the major problem. So let's see if I explain it. Opportunities exist for AGI to create a more positive process, especially if management addresses the direct contact complaint. Again, all I'm doing is talking about the evidence and what I'm thinking, what that evidence is leading me to decide. And you know what? Now I have a bunch of warrants in there, and now it's a little clearer to me about why we want 360-degree reviews by stakeholders on site at the course. And what we have is one claim, we have three pieces of evidence, and we have 4 warrants. So lots of nice explanation of the evidence. And that means we have substantiated our claim. And look what happens. Look at the length of this. For those of you who struggle just saying, "Oh, I don't know what else to say," so you just fluff, put a little fluff in there and make stuff up, and we all know you're just faking it. We know that. You know that. And it's not very exciting for you either. This is a way of building meaning towards your actual claim, towards being persuasive, insightful, and incisive. Everything here in this paragraph is serving a purpose. You're either providing some evidence, talking about that evidence, or bringing in that claim that you want us to arrive at as well. That's the CWE inventory. So let's recap that. This is recapping both lectures on proving ideas. If you want to figure out whose ideas are whose and get a sense of how much of you is in the piece, do the CKOM exercise. If you want to draw your attention to your claims in your papers, do the how do I know test and see if you are actually including evidence and warrants. And if you really want to talk about proving a claim, use the evidence, warrants, and claims inventory. Make sure that each paragraph has only one claim, and make sure there's sufficient evidence for that claim, and that each piece of evidence is warranted, has an explanation. Don't just include the evidence, talk about it. And if you do those 3 exercises, you're going to have some solidly substantiated claims that become clear to a reader. And that takes us to the end of Proving Ideas 2. I'll see you next time.